Hello, and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Sports. My name is Michael Rasile. This is the show where we get to talk about sports, we get to talk about business, and we get to talk about everything in between. Wherever you're listening, however you're listening, you know what to do. You know what I'm going to ask. Like and subscribe, 5-star review, blah, blah, blah. You already know it, so I would appreciate it. It would really help me out. But the reason we're all here today, my incredible guest, Kathleen Ralls, empowerment leader, author, educator, entrepreneur. Some may say she's even a doctor. Kathleen, how you doing today?
I am excellent, Michael. How are you?
It's a great day to be alive, isn't it? The weather's
It
finally
is.
starting to warm up. We had winter for like a couple extra days here in New Jersey, which kind of pissed me off a little bit, but we're coming right out of it. We're
Hmm.
back in springtime, so I'm very excited about it. Kathleen, I'm excited to talk to you today. All the things that you've done in your life, all the things that you are doing, all the things that are going to be happening in about a month, publishing a book, I hear. More
Hmm.
importantly, the first question I have for everybody on the For the Love of Sports podcast is, Kathleen, why do you love sports so much?
Yeah, it's so much fun, obviously. Sports was my way to connect with people. I'm kind of a shy, introverted person, though I won't seem like that in the podcast because I love the one-on-one conversation. But it was a great way for me to make friends right away in school. I'm tall, I'm 5'10", so people ask me if I play basketball or volleyball. I was on the basketball team. I was on the team. Didn't
I
play volleyball.
I catch what you're I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yes, I'm more of a field hockey softball girl. So I mean, I am athletic. I still play in a field hockey league, and I'm a runner and things. But anyway, just I love the connections that I can make in sport. I love just getting out and setting goals for myself. I am 44 years old, so my goals are a little bit different than they were when I was like 14. But still setting goals, still enjoying myself, and still getting better. So.
That's what we're trying to do. 1% better every single day, man. We're gonna all be incredible out here. And I think that's really interesting. First off, didn't know they still had like field hockey leagues for adults. That's interesting.
Oh,
I barely knew
yes.
they had field hockey leagues for children, let alone adults still. So that's funny. And I actually still play softball occasionally too. Might be a couple beer involved. Might be nice and slow pitch. We're here to have a good time, but
Mhm.
we always have a good time, which is the important part, and that's why we do it. But that's like how most people like. That's how I gained most of my friends, right? Like playing sports at a young age. There was those people that, you'd go to a school, right, and you'd either play at recess or you'd play in the rec leagues and the travel teams, and you're with people a lot. What does misery love? A little bit of company. You're always around each other. You're always doing the same things. It was always pretty crazy. So I guess like what about sports, right? Like all that stuff's great and dandy and it's fun, right? It's cool when you're 14, but coming
Mhm.
out of college, and we talked a little bit about this before. You were a sports writer for a bit. Like what made you want to get into the business side of sports, knowing like, hey, I was on the basketball team. Let me just clarify that one more time. I don't know if I could get too much further than that. So like,
Yeah.
what was it about sports that not only did you want to be a part of it, but you wanted to make it your career and your livelihood moving forward?
Hmm. I mean, I think part of it for me is not wanting to give up on the things I've really enjoyed. I think, being a professional athlete was not in my future. And I didn't know that for a long time. I really held on to that dream. I really wanted to play left field for the Red Sox for a very long period of time. I loved Jim Rice growing up, and I thought, I can play the wall, like no problem.
I was
But
gonna say that wall is a little difficult. Are you
yeah,
okay? All right.
but I thought I was up for it, Michael. I'm like, I just, practice. Um, so when I was, heading into my professional career and looking into sports, I started writing at the UMass Daily Collegian. And, there were lots I could write for news. I love politics. I was a history teacher for a long time. I'm super into current events, which is really a silly
Yeah,
statement.
sorry to
Super
hear
into
that.
current events, but
Sorry to hear that.
yeah, no, sorry. We don't have to go there. But I think just like the fun part of promoting other people who are setting goals, other people who are pursuing their dreams, of digging into the why. When I was writing, I really enjoyed the feature stories of sitting down and talking with someone and understanding, what it was that drove them to come to practice, that made them better, how they respond to coaches, how they respond to teammates, how they pick themselves up. I play in my women's field hockey league, and last night, actually, we had a sub come play, and she plays for Boston College. I'm exactly twice her age. And I
Sounds like a
was,
ringer too. That doesn't sound very fair.
we were going to play short otherwise. So what were we supposed to do? Say no? And she came out, and anyway, so we're playing. We play in this league, we play in this team, and it's just a way for us to continue to do the things that we love. So it's kind of this side error, and I totally went off on a sidetrack here from your question, but
You're doing great.
yeah. It's still what I'm thinking about is how good she was. We were joking, we're like, you could play with one arm and still win the game for us. But so anyway, so we actually went down. We were down a few goals. We just didn't know how to play with her yet. We were still trying to, like, kind of, the aura hadn't fallen off. And I think in sports, like, you have to play the clock out. And I always admire that. You're sitting there and you're like, the game is over. Basketball, you're down 40 points. You're not coming back. There's a minute 29 left, but you can't walk off the court. And I think in so many other areas of your life, or if you haven't played sports, you're like, well, I'm done. I'm going to quit. I'm over. And you just can't do it. You can't walk off the field. You can't leave your coaches. You can't leave your teammates. I don't know. I'm always impressed by that. People who, you have to hang in there. It's a really important lesson in life.
It really is. And I've never actually gotten that answer before, which I think is really cool. And it's a great point, right? So, baseball is one of my favorite sports because there is no clock. Like, there is no time limit. A 9 inning game could take 2 hours. It doesn't anymore. It would be nice. 9 inning game could take 5 hours if the Red Sox and Yankees end up playing, which, obviously those games take way too long, but it is what it is. So that's one of the reasons why I love baseball too, is because, like, you can't, like, in football, right? You can take a kneel. In the NBA, yeah, you guys, both teams kind of know 40 points. There's nothing we can do about it. Like, let's speed this up by not doing too much. But in baseball, like, pitcher has to throw a strike over the plate. Like there's literally nothing you can do in baseball to get out of that, right? And that's one of the more interesting things about that sport to me, is where those, like, you have to get 27 outs. That's the only way you can win a game, is if you get 27 outs. So it's always very interesting to me from that perspective. And I think from a leadership perspective, from a coaching perspective, from a teacher perspective, all things that you're very familiar with, how do you teach those types of lessons, and how do you accept those types of lessons and learn from them? Because sometimes that can be really difficult, right? You're really great at school, you're really great in high school, and then you go on to college and you're just kind of another number at that point, unfortunately, and it's not as easy as it was. So how do you kind of utilize both sides of that learning experience, because both are very necessary in what you do?
I think so much of it comes down to modeling. That was the first word that, like, came to my mind when you were talking, Michael, is just, let's say as a coach or a teacher, say as a teacher, the lesson is completely bombing. Like, teaching the War of 1812 is dreadfully boring. I will admit that now.
Really?
I didn't enjoy it.
Didn't they, like, burn the White House down in that one?
Sure.
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
was
if you're
kind of
going
cool,
to call
right?
that a highlight, I mean.
I mean, it's got to be interesting, right? Like, I don't know.
Yes. My husband used to work in the White House years ago, and he took his gromother, and because she was in a wheelchair, they had to go in an elevator, and they got to see the burn marks that are still in the
See?
kitchen.
That's pretty cool.
I didn't, though, because
Oh,
I
okay.
had to walk the stairs. So, but side story. But, think about teaching, and, like, the lesson is just going off. All the kids are like, I cannot believe Miss Ralls is just dragging this thing out. I just, be quiet. Can the period be over? Are we done with this thing? But you have to kind of keep going and keep, modeling that you care about this content, even if you don't. You have to keep going, that it's important that, you try hard, even if it's something that you're not particularly interested in. I had, as a teacher, sometimes I would have students who really didn't like history. And I would say to them, like, listen, like, I get it. Like, you hate me, you hate life, you hate history, whatever it is that's going on. But if I can just give you this gift of helping you get through the class and get the credit, and then go on to do the things that you love to do, I think that's my job here. I'm not going to make you love history or really even like me, and that's okay. But can we make this deal that I'm going to get you through this so that you can go on and spend the time on the things that you really enjoy in life? So I think that's a lesson that, that I've learned in sport, and that I've carried on to my students.
And so I guess, what is it about teaching and coaching that, obviously, as you said, you started as a sports writer, eventually went on to be a teacher, to be a coach in many different facets. Where did that come from? Was that always something that you wanted to do? Was that always something that you're like, hey, like I learned some things, might as well share that? War of 1812 is pretty boring, but people need to know about it. Like, where does that come from? Is that in your family? Is that just a personal thing that you've always wanted to do?
Yeah, it's totally in my family. My mom is the first person in our family to earn a college degree. She graduated from Lowell State in Massachusetts in 1969, and she is still teaching today, Michael.
Wow.
She retired, but she is subbing, and she subs in an alternative high school in Lowell, Massachusetts. And so she just cannot let it go. So I grew up with, the daughter of a teacher. I'm married to a teacher. I have cousins who are teachers. So certainly it's really in my blood. And when I was a sports writer, I had initially thought I would major in education. But then everyone's like, oh, you're going to be just like your mom. And I was like, oh, God, no. I'm like 17. I'm like, no way. I'm not my mother. So that's where the spin came into journalism, because I do love to write. And of course, I love sports. But I started writing, and I also was coaching still. And I began to really love the coaching more than I loved the writing. And so I thought, well, what can I pair with this? I might as well be my mom and become a teacher. So
Yeah, it usually does end up like that. The more I look back, the more my parents were right. Whether I'll never tell that to their face, like will not ever tell that to their face, but they were pretty much right, like about everything, and it's very frustrating.
yeah.
I can only imagine what it's going to be like on the other side of that, but we'll get there when we get there. I guess. What is it about? Why do history teachers always be? Why are they always the sports like coaches? Is that just like a thing?
It
Because
is
everywhere
such a
I've gone, right?
It is such a thing. Like the first school I taught at, like I think 5 of the 8 of history teachers were all coaches. So like the 3 who were miserable at lunch, because we would just break down our teams, so like ad nauseum, and just like so and Olivia's not scoring. What am I going to do? And like, things that no one should care about, JV field hockey. And like the other coaches would be so into it because I'd get into their seasons like when they were on. So I don't I don't know if there's just a I don't know what the connection is, but there is one. I would agree with that.
It's always everywhere I've been. It's always the history teacher that's the coach. It's just
Mhm.
curious. I don't know if you had a little insight, but it seems like you guys are doing pretty well. So one thing, so getting into kind of the teaching, the leadership, the writing a little bit more. You have a book coming out pretty soon. If please make sure I'm correct here. I have take your word for it. Sports Cultivate World-Class Leaders. Very excited to get to check that out. That should be dropping, as the kids like to say, in May. Tell me a little bit about this book, why you wanted to write it, why now, what happened in life that you're like, you know what, now's the time to write a book. Like what's going on with that, and tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah, just had some extra time in my hands. No, just
Shit, why
kidding.
not, right?
Um, no, I did a PhD. So I got a chance to teach in Norway for a year. So I was teaching the U.S., Washington D.C. area, up in my native Massachusetts, and I applied for a Fulbright. And I'm a state school kid, Michael. So when I applied, I was like, I'm not going to get it. But my husband was like, you're going to apply, you're going to get it, you're going to go, and he was right.
I like his positivity.
Yeah, I
I
do
like that.
too. So he didn't come with me. So I moved to Norway for a year. He stayed in Massachusetts and taught and coached. And I had a great experience teaching in 50 different schools all over, like the whole country. I traveled. My mom came over and got to do a little teaching, of course, And so I came home and I was like, wow, like, I think I need to try some new things in my life. I don't know that I can spend the rest of my life in a classroom. So I started picking away at a PhD, and 2.5 years into the program, I had one course left, and I was really focused on civics education. So back to the old history part. And I used to tell my students, like, listen, like, again, like if you run into me in 10 years and you're like, I hated you, I hated your class, I get a real like issue, but I vote. I'll be so happy that you vote, because I think it's so important. Whoever you vote for, I don't even care, as long as you can understand yourself and explain it. I think it's wonderful. So I had this focus on civics education. In fact, I went to Ireland to study their, mandatory civics education program. And I came back, and there was a talk one night, a group of international educators were talking about gender equity in their home countries. And that's something that's always been really interested to me, because sports has always empowered me, I feel like, as a female. And I went home and I thought, civics education is cool, but like I wouldn't be here talking with you right now, because we would be done the conversation in about 12 seconds. Like, But I thought I could talk about gender equity, I could talk about travel, I could talk about sports forever. So I went and talked to my advisor, and I was like, I know I only have one course left before I start the whole dissertation research thing, but I don't want to do what I've been doing for 2.5 years. I'm going to scrap it. And they were like, okay, sure. Like, seems like a good idea, Kathleen. Like, way to go. Good planning on your part. But I did it anyway. And so ended up working really well. So I went to Ethiopia, which is way cooler than what I had planned on doing. I worked with a group called the Girls Gotta Run Foundation, and I spent several months in 2 locations. And the Girls Gotta Run Foundation basically saves girls who are headed towards child marriage. And so they provide education, funding, training for track. They have a life skills program. And I wanted to go to Ethiopia because I really wanted to know, like, more about the best runners in the world and what does their training look like. And so I got to go there. They dropped me on their runs hardcore. I'm like running through these fields and they're like crisscrossing and I'm like still here. Like, I'll get there eventually. One girl stayed back one day so I wouldn't get lost, and she got in like such trouble with the coach. I felt terrible. I was so sorry. Like, it's all my fault. We're having a language translation issue, but I'm slow. How do I tell you that? Slow. So anyway, I wrote what the focus for my research was. One of the things I've always struggled with is voice, because I felt like if I had participated in sports that I would be the quietest person in the world, possibly. But through sports, I was able to be a captain in high school, and to be my own type of leader. And that led me to feel empowered to be a teacher and to lead classrooms and to be empowered to lead my teams. I mean, I've coached high school sports for 20 years. So, and I had looked through the literature and I didn't find any connections between sports, gender equity, and voice. And so that was what I looked at. And I talked to those girls in Ethiopia and I said, do you feel like you have, greater voice empowerment because of your participation in sports? And 100% said yes. And they talked a lot about being the most educated people in their families. They talked a lot about how they teach women about the science of menstruation and what women's bodies are actually like and not what they're told. So I wrote the dissertation, defended on the last in-person day in March 2020. It's a really long answer to your question.
Oh, no. March 2020.
Yeah.
Lucky you got it in right under the gun, huh?
Literally the last day.
Whoa.
We didn't know. March 6th. We went on to spring break and never came back. And so I was going to be going to higher ed. And I had been offered a couple positions to be a professor. And to be honest, the money was half of what I'd make as a K through 12 teacher. And so I kind of thought about, okay, how can I pivot and reposition myself? And so I looked into this book program, Creator Institute, New Degree Press, which you are also familiar with because you are also an author. I'm a wannabe. You were already there. And I decided to look at women. Rather, I talked to girls in voice empowerment sport, but I interviewed women and to see if they also felt empowered because of their participation in sport in their professional lives. So that's what the focus of the book is.
That's incredible. I think I'm just taking that leap of faith in the beginning, right? Saying like, I actually don't want to do this anymore. I know I've done this for like 2.5 years, but this kind of stinks. I don't want to do it anymore. Not that it stinks, but I don't want to do this anymore. I have better ideas. I have better things that I could possibly do. First off, that just takes a lot of guts. I think that's incredible. So shout out to you for that one. Usually when you bet on yourself in situations that make sense, it ends up turning out to be the right thing, right? Like, as you said, like you're much more passionate about this topic and empowering females through sports, through leadership. I mean, obviously that's such a cool topic to get to talk about, and hey, that's why we're here today. So I think that's pretty awesome. But it's definitely something that I think is really important. And one thing, so I'm kind of curious, just general thoughts. As I said, this is going to be very back and forth, so we're just going to kind of go off the top here. One thing, I've spoken to people that focus on women in sports a lot, and it usually ends up being less about women in sports and more about girls in sports, because so many females stop playing sports at like 12, 13 years old, right? Like they get to high school essentially, and it's just like, well, there's less rec leagues, there's less, I guess recreational time to do that kind of thing. So like, how is that the first step? Just trying to keep women in sports longer so that they can develop some more of these skills? Because I think like that's and again, these aren't my words. These are just things I've heard from other incredible people I've had on the show. Like that's one of the biggest problems is that by that time, right? Like me, like I played rec baseball and then I played high school and then, I played, my beer league softball league when I was like 19, but we didn't drink beer yet, like, so we did all that kind of stuff. And I feel like there's fewer of those types of maybe opportunities for women. How do you kind of view that aspect of it? Because I think, right, look, the longer we can keep girls playing sports, just the more better things that are going to happen, right?
Yeah, I think you touched on like a lot of topics. The first is, how do we keep girls in sport? Because you're right, like the research says 12, 13, this is where the big drop off is. I think that one thing to look at is the emphasis on what it means to be an athlete. And I think that needs to change to be more inclusive,
What
in
is
a
it now?
sense.
Like, what is it?
Well, yeah. So I think now I would use the first word that comes to mind is competition, that you need to be very competitive to be an athlete. And I think a lot of girls, the research I've found is that they're not really raised to think of themselves as being competitive, you know. And so, well, I'm not a competitive person. I've had these conversations. I've taught actually like pre-K to graduate school, so I've worked with a lot of age groups. And so when I talk with these younger girls, they say, I don't see myself as competitive. I'm not good at sports. And part of me thinks, well, yeah, sure, there's people who are naturally inclined to be athletic, whether it's their energy, whether it's their genes, it's their family dynamics. But I think like a lot of sport is practice. A lot of sport is going in there and like frankly sucking for a while and then figuring out I kind of like this, or I'm kind of good at this, or I've found a coach who believes in me, my teammates are super cool, and I'm going to stay with it. And I think that there is a lot more that goes into sport that we don't emphasize. I've coached high school, but I also coached a little girls basketball team near Springfield, Massachusetts, a home, of basketball, and grades 3 through 5. And my team got trounced the 1 year I coached. I actually was asked to coach. It was an ecumenical girls basketball team, the St. Elizabeth and Seton tidal waves. Rolls
Oh,
right off the tongue.
that really does. The tidal waves in Massachusetts, all seven of them. Anyway,
And they asked me because they wanted a female coach. And they said, we would like, it's always dads, and they do a great job, but can they would love a female leader. So I said yes. And I was already coaching 3 high school teams. And I was like, sure, add a 4th. Sounds perfect. But I learned a lot from that season. And so much of what I emphasized was just about self-improvement, getting to know the girls and figuring out what is it that they want to improve on, where are they at. And I didn't emphasize winning. And I think for the competitive girls, I pushed them to challenge themselves and to who had already played basketball to be better. But some of them, I remember one girl, she didn't dribble until February, like last couple weeks of the season, she didn't dribble in a game. And she got the ball and she dribbled like twice. And she's looking at me in the sideline, like, look at me. And I'm like, whoa. So I think, the first thing is to, just to broaden the scope of what it means to be an athlete, that it's okay to get out and just have some fun. And if you're not competitive, like I feel like you just kind of get weaned out of the system, so to speak. But let's keep those numbers up. Let's make that a goal of ours. So I think for young girls, sorry, go ahead.
no. I was gonna say, I think like that is such a great point because like I'm not very good and I'm not really a competitive person. It's just something to do. Like my wife and I, we just decided last year. It was just like I like hitting things with other things. Do you want to like just play tennis? Like we don't know what we're doing. We're terrible at it. We use the entire court, but it's just me and her and a couple of our friends. And it's just something to do. It's fun to get out. It's fun to kind of challenge yourself a little bit. Like, can I do this? Like, how do you put spin on a ball? I don't know. Friggin' see if I can figure it out. Like, so we just do that out of just pure fun and like just activity, especially with the pandemic, everyone being inside for as long as we were. I had a great time. I feel like weird saying it, but I had an absolute blast. Like I just hung out with my wife for like a year and a half. Like it really wasn't that big a deal. But I think like just those types of things made me kind of realize like you need to get out. You need to do something. Like sitting inside, like the winter kind of does it for me because I hate being cold. And that's why I love spring and summer because I want to be outside constantly. So that's why I don't know why I live here in New Jersey other than my friends and family, but it's really nothing I could do about it at this point. It's just like I like how and I don't know, maybe you did research on this, maybe you did figure it out. How do we kind of change that perception of sports to be competitive, to be like you need to be the best at this, or you're wasting your time, versus like, hey man, like you don't have to play at the highest level. Like you could just do this for fun on weekends. Like go play a pickup basketball game with some random people at the gym. Like how, like I feel like that's more of, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like that's more of a male inclined thing to do. How have you seen that in the female space? Is that changing? How do you, have you done research on that? Is there anything that we can start to do collectively, just a society, just to get people to be like, yeah, just who cares? Like just have fun. That's all we're here to do.
Yeah, I think, if we're looking at like adults, if we're kind of jumping some age groups here, it's definitely true. Like the field hockey league that I talked about earlier, like our games are at like 8:50 and 9:45 on Tuesday
Ooh.
nights. Oh yeah.
No, I'm in bed by 9:45 on
Yeah.
Tuesday nights. Ugh, good for you.
But I say that because we're obviously not getting the prime times in the in the league, or not in the league, but in the facility that we play in. And it is a really, last night we had to bring the ringer in because everyone's having children or they're home with children, and so that's a different thing for women. Is that like physically they cannot play field hockey. Like 8 months pregnant, it's just not sticks and
Probably not
balls
a
and
good idea. Yeah,
yeah. There's lots of things
I'm
that
not
they
a doctor. But probably not again. You are a doctor. We haven't
not.
brought that up. We'll get there. We'll get there. Well, no, we talked about the PhD. Never mind. I apologize.
We're not a medical doctor, so yes, so like that is definitely a hindrance, for a lot of the women. That I can always picture my teammate Allie, like she's running in with like her red shirt on, like the kids wouldn't go to bed, blah, blah, blah. We're like, just get on the court, it's fine, Allie, you're our sweep, you're good. So, but I think one of the sports that has become really inclusive is running, and it's a place that I kind of pride myself in being a 3-sport athlete in high school with field hockey, basketball, and softball, but I do a lot of running. In fact, I have a running streak right now of over 1,000 days. I don't know,
Oh my
1,020
gosh.
something. And I run outdoors all year here in Massachusetts. So
Good for
like,
you.
that miserable weather. But I think the running community has become more inclusive. Not for everyone, but certainly it's something that I learned in high school when I was coaching. I actually was my husband's assistant coach. He's a big track guy. He ran at Bucknell. He's from Pennsylvania and all over the country. And that's his, like, he's a girls track coach now. And that's his real, he loves it. That's his favorite thing that he does. And when we taught and coached at Northampton High School in Massachusetts, where Smith College is, the school is really inclusive with students of other abilities. So I had a lot of students with Downs and autism in the classroom, and turns out that these students were phenomenal athletes, super competitive in Special Olympics. And so they ended up competing on the high school team, and great athletes, great competitors, still competing today. I talk with several of them, one of them every day still. It's been 15 years since I had them in the classroom. But I think what I learned from track is that we could find ways for people to compete, whatever it is that they're interested in, whatever their ability was, that we were going to find an event for them. The cool part at Northampton High, I do want to give a shout out to their teammates, is their teammates were like, Coach, she doesn't want to do the 100 and the 200. She wants to do long jump and go through the shot put. And it was like, how do you know that? Like, how did you, like, one of the students was a selective mute. And I was like, she told you that? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, great. We will put her in those events. But, there was a way to include everybody and a way for everyone to feel part of the team and to contribute to the team. And so as I've gotten older, it is hard to find places for women to compete. But running is a way to do that, because you can get out there and run, you can walk. I think one of the things I love about it is I follow a lot of professional female runners on Instagram. That's like my thing. And they are so inclusive about like just being your best. They're so honest about their injuries. They're honest about, like their downtimes. And I think, if you're someone who wants someone who's real, like those are athletes that have been, I think, great role models for anyone at any speed, at any level.
Yeah, and that's so true, right? Like just because you're female doesn't mean you can't be faster than, me, right? Like it's just, so I think that's really interesting. I never kind of thought, I always think running's always the punishment in every other sport. It's never like the sport. So it's always kind of difficult. So I will be a little facetious here and say running sucks. So is
Yeah.
there any other sport that we could do that's more inclusive? Is there anything else that we could kind of all agree
Yes.
upon is fun? But no, of course I'm very
Curling is
curling.
something I think.
Weirdly enough, my boss at my work just joined a curling club here in Plainfield, New Jersey. So it's coming around. It's
Mhm.
coming around. But
We're
no, in all
on to
sincerity,
something here.
say it again.
Said we're on to something here, Michael.
Hey,
We're throwing out curling.
look at that. We'll figure it out, Kathleen. That's why we do this thing. But no, I think it is really interesting. And so I guess then kind of tying it back, it's surprise, surprise. When you were in Ethiopia, you met all those girls that ran. Would you look at that? Now what you're doing, I think, just connecting all these dots here. Like how do you see that, right? So like help me understand a little bit more. When I see a women's basketball team or a basketball team, there's a huddle, there's a play, people are getting pumped up. Let's do this. Where does that leadership, where does that empowerment come from
Mm.
in a like on a track team? Because any track events I've ever been to or witnessed, it seems like everyone's kind of doing their thing. There's a bunch of stuff going on at once, and I don't know, there's like a fake gun that gets fired off. Like where does that leadership, where does that empowerment come from a sport like that? Specifically because it was something that you had the opportunity to see in a completely other country, not only just here in the United States.
Yeah, it all is in the fake gun, Michael.
Of course, everyone loves a good cap gun, Colleen. Kathleen, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, and something I had to adapt to coming from kind of like the more team sport-ish, traditional team sports. So I think one of the key parts is to know what your teammates' goals are. And if you know what your teammates' goals are, you can look across the track and say long jump in the long jump, or she's going to come over and tell me that. And she's achieved that goal. She's moving the team forward. She's moving herself forward. That's really empowering. Part of knowing what your teammates are doing is being able to set a goal and to voice that goal. And that's huge, to say, this is what I want to achieve. That can be a really big hurdle, for lack of a better word, for a lot of people, is to be vocal and to be public about their goals. So you can do that in track. That's something that a coach can do. It's something actually my husband has taught me about track, is to build that community. One of the things he would do, after a meet, is the next day he would have a sheet, and he would have everyone's results. And some of the kids would be, the usual kids in the top 10 list, they reset the school record in the 1500, whatever. But he also would highlight, all the personal records or the personal bests. And so like, Michael, you may be the slowest guy on the team, but like, you ran the fastest you've ever run. And now we all know, and it was awesome. I saw you come in last in the 100, and it was awesome because you ran your best. And to build that community and to say, hey, like, we're all moving forward. Maybe you don't score any points for the team, but by you coming out here and giving your best at practice and showing it in a meet, we're all on the same page. We're all working towards that same goal. We're all contributing towards that goal. Because being part of a baseball team, that if you've got 3 or 4 guys that are not really bringing it every day, that bring a poor attitude, that are like too good for the team and not trying that hard, how that can bring a team down. So there are ways to do that in track.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I never did track because, again, not a big I'm a big walking guy. Love going on walks. In the summer, I'll walk like 3 times a day. I absolutely love it. Running, not so much. I do run a 5K every year on my birthday. It's like the last 3 miles of the New York City Marathon. I have a friend that gets us in, so we get to cross the finish line and everything. So that's always fun. But that's the extent of my running for the year. So I guess I'm kind of curious. Going back to the book a little bit, one more time. Take her word for it. Sports Cultivate World-Class World-Class Leaders, written by Dr. Kathleen Ralls. What is your plan with the book? That was always something. Again, I went through the Creators Institute. Incredible people. I've had multiple friends. I've got them into the creator. I introduced them to Professor Coster. They've written books. It's been absolutely incredible. And that was always the one thing. I honestly just kind of did it for fun. It was like the height of the pandemic. I had literally nothing else to do. I was like, you know what? Kind of cool to write a book. I don't know. I got a bunch sitting upstairs. It was kind of fun. I've had some speaking gigs since. It's, as I told you before, I want to become a teacher. So that's, I don't know, it seems like that's one of those checklist things you need to become a teacher or a professor in some capacity. But what's the goal with this book? Say, what after it comes out in May when it absolutely crushes the pre-sale and you make millions of dollars because we know
Mhm.
that's how authors work now.
Yep.
What's the next step? Like, what are you trying to accomplish with being able to put that out into the universe and saying, hey, like, I know a lot about this. You should
Hmm.
come ask me about it, or let me tell you about it at least.
Yes. So I'm also creating my own company. So it's called Kathleen Ralls LLC, and it's a
Where'd you
female
that?
empowerment.
Where's that idea come from? Where's the name come from? I'm curious.
I know, it's just like something that just like came to me. It was
Man,
crazy.
incredible. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just so surprised.
I know. It's just the creativity is amazing over here. No, so I'm creating a company, Female Empowerment. It's a public speaking and consulting business, and just actually starting at the spring. And so a lot of what I'm talking about, a lot of the research from the book, it goes hand in hand with my keynote talks about how women can empower the lessons that they learn in sport, whatever level they competed at or participated in, whatever sport that they loved. How do they translate those lessons to be successful in their professional lives? So I'm using, the book will come out in May. It's an extension of my doctoral research. And now I'm also going to be part of my public speaking business, is to say, hey, if you enjoyed my talk with your business, your organization, then you can buy my book as well. So it's part of my business plan.
Love it. That is fantastic, and I think it's very important for that information to get out there, right? Because there are
Mhm.
so many women in sports. There are so many women that could take advantage of this type of just this the knowledge, the information, and also I'm pretty sure you started this saying that you were an introvert and now you own a public speaking business. So are you
Yeah.
lying? Like, I'm not gonna call you a liar, but none of this is adding up right now, Kathleen. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
It's why I studied voice for my research, is because it's something that I have to work at.
I love it. See, there
Yeah.
you go. Challenge yourself every day. Be comfortable getting uncomfortable. That's the cliche. So I guess I'm also kind of curious. Well, first, where can we pre-order it? How can I go about finding the book now? I'm more of a Kindle guy. So like, can I
Mhm.
buy it? Like, can I get it on Kindle, like Amazon store or anything?
It will be in May.
Okay,
Yep, you'll be
perfect,
able to purchase it on Amazon.
perfect. So that's what I'll get it. Why should I buy the book? I'm
Mhm.
not a woman. So, that's it. That's my statement. Why should I buy the book? Like, what is it like? Legitimately, what is it in for me? What kind of knowledge would I get out of this that would potentially add value to me and what I'm doing in my personal life on a daily, weekly, monthly basis?
Sure. It comes back to, do you work with women? Do you live with
Yes,
women? Do you have
yes,
friends who are women?
yes.
Okay, good. So
Perfect.
a lot of what the book focuses on is how to work together and how to work in teams. And so even if you don't identify as a woman, you can certainly benefit from understanding how to work better on teams that have women, because maybe you never participated in track, as you said, Michael, and a lot of times the boys and girls track teams practice together and they get to work together, but how to be a better, it's just how to be a better teammate,
That's
and
awesome.
how to, create space for others, how to recognize, how to empower others. So the focus is on women because this is a particular area of struggle for them, for us, but certainly men can benefit from it as well.
Yeah,
Um,
it sounds like a lot of great information that many people can take advantage of just to learn and understand, right? I always think that's a really interesting one, like perspective, like walk a mile in someone else's shoes, yada yada yada, that kind of stuff. And it's always interesting when you hear people talk just about, oh, that person had it so lucky, and just on generalities, like you have literally no idea how that person had it. You're just seeing them in this one instance, in this one moment. So it's probably best to understand just your point of view, and I'm sure the point of view of many of the incredible people that you did have the opportunity to have in the book, and just understand where other people are coming from, because I think learning someone else's experiences can kind of shed light on what other people are going through, which I think is important, but also maybe potentially shed light on some of the stuff you are going through as the reader as well.
mhm. Yeah, I identify as someone who's kind of a quiet introvert, but one of the women I interviewed was my college roommate, a woman named Lauren O'Malley, girl from Boston who lives in Ireland in the north now.
Whoa. She
Yeah, she
really went
was
hardcore to that. That's awesome. Good for her.
Lauren O'Malley,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I get it.
Kathleen with the red hair. We're like same height. We're like dream roommates. The most extroverted person that I know, and a credible athlete. She has, attempted K2, Mount Everest, South America, Kilimanjaro for her 40th birthday. She does open water swims now.
Mm-hmm.
So she wants to do all, I think there are 8 channels, great channels. I don't know. No. But there's a lot of really rough water out there that she wants to swim through. And so she's an incredible athlete. She's a mother of 2 boys. And she works in the Belfast prison. So she's a woman who is in a gender minority situation on a daily basis. And she was really interesting. She shared, as she's getting older into her 40s, she said, everyone looks to me to talk. If there's someone needs to speak up, they like push me forward and say, Lauren, you're the one, you can do this. And she's like, I know I can. I'd be really short-sighted if I didn't see that in myself. But I've actually been able to learn more from taking a step back. And the first opportunities I'm able to do that is because I'm still an athlete. So she talked about, she did a lot of mountaineering in her 20s and 30s. And now she's getting into swimming. And it's something, she actually did the Sublime Marathon too. It's 156 miles across the Sahara Desert in 6 days. Yeah, it's insane. So she's amazing. But she talked about how sport has allowed her, because she's trying all these new like competitions, these endeavors. She's like, I don't know everything. So, I can't be, I'm loud and I can talk and I can lead that way, but like, I'm not learning. And it's been a great lesson for her to step back and say, you've done the Sublime Marathon. Tell me everything you know about it. Because they actually have to carry everything that they're going to eat for the entire competition. So for she has 6 days of food, water and the whole bit. So not water, but everything else. What she's doing, she does a lot of team swim competitions with other women. And these women are really accomplished. They've been swimming a really long time. And they're like, Lauren, what should we do? And she's like, this isn't my field. And so she's learning the words to use to say, like, you tell us, like, you're the expert, like, this isn't my strength. And so, I think that there are a lot of lessons to be learned from trying out different styles of leadership and taking, a look at situations and saying, like, how can I actually benefit from this? Because she sees it as a benefit.
Yeah, I could only imagine. I mean, it's incredible that these other women who have been doing things for so long still look up to her. And that's really the power of confidence, right? That's the power of empowering and being a leader. I think that's absolutely incredible. So shout out to your incredible college roommate. Yeah, just going really hard. OMalley moving back to the motherland. That's incredible. But Kathleen, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. Where can we find out more information on the book? Where can we follow you on your social medias? Find out more about your business? Lay it all down. I will put everything in the show notes for everybody in case they missed it, but let me know because, spell it out. It might be easier for us.
Okay, sure. So the first place for my business is my name, KathleenRalls.com. You can also check out my Instagram, Kathleen Ralls LLC is my business, and find me on LinkedIn. Those are the 3 major places that I painfully, post things on because, as an introvert, like posting on social media is pretty big endeavor.
Yeah, I hate social media. It's such a terrible place. Just a terrible place. I try and I on my phone, everything's limited to like 5 minutes pretty much. It's just like,
Yep.
All right, after that, it goes dark and you can't use it anymore. But I think that's incredible. I will put everything down there. Sincerely appreciate it. Very excited for the book. That is going to be so much fun. Definitely excited to learn. I'm almost finished with the book I'm reading now. So I think by the time May, maybe not almost finished, I'm about halfway done. So by the time we get to May, I think ordering another book will be perfect time. So Kathleen, this has been incredible. Thank you so much. I appreciate you and everybody giving me a little bit of your time because it's the only thing we don't get more of. So thank you very much for that. But other than that, I hope everybody just has just a wonderful rest of their day. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you.